Welcome to Larry's Library. For this month's top 10, we're going all the way back to 1980. We're going to look at my top 10 favorite comic books of the year 1980. Number one movie at the box office in 1980 was The Empire Strikes Back. 10th at the box office was another one of my favorites, The Blues Brothers, the first one. Alfred Hitchcock died, and Richard Pryor managed to set himself on fire while freebasing cocaine. Ronald Reagan was elected president. The cars sucked, but the music was great. And I was 12 years old. Now, a lot of the books in this countdown I remember buying off the stands. Many of them via a spinner rack in a convenience store. But not all of them. Some of them I got later, months later, or even years later. But I remember seeing all these covers back when they were new on the stands, for sure. At number 10, I've got Marvel 2-in-1, issue 63. This one was The Thing and Warlock. And I will never forget that gorgeous cover by George Perez with inks by Terry Austin. Boy, that is a hell of a combo right there. And Warlock's hand jutting up out of the earth, coming up out of the ground like that. Wow, just a spectacular cover and a great comic book. This one also had Moondragon and Starhawk. And let's see, I got my notes in front of me here. It was written by Mark Gruenwald, fan favorite Mark Gruenwald. He was the fan favorite back then, and of course, he's still a legendary figure now in a lot of people's minds as a Marvel writer. And the art was by Jerry Bingham and Gene Day. So yeah, this was a great issue. Number 9 is Savage She-Hulk, number 8. Now this one caught my eye for a couple of reasons. One, the cover is by Michael Golden. And two, it has one of my favorite characters in all of Marvel, and that is Man-Thing. And he guests in this issue, and yeah, awesome. The cover alone is enough to make you want to grab this one. This issue was written by David Anthony Kraft with art by Mike Vosberg and Chick Stone. Number 8 is Shogun Warriors issue 19. Now this series didn't last long. I think it went 20 issues. I have all of them in singles now, and I had them back then too. I love this series. This was about giant robots, but they didn't transform and they weren't sentient. They were piloted. These were piloted mechs. And this was long before Transformers and long before GoBots or any of those things. I tried to look this up once. I can't remember. I do think this property came before Transformers, but I might be wrong on that. It could be that Transformers was adapted from something else that was older than I thought it was. So I'm sure you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, because the Transformers are wildly popular. I was never a big fan because for me it was all about the Shogun Warriors. That was my first exposure to that giant robot concept. So it's just stayed my favorite, even 40 years later. So this was issue 19, second to last, and it was guest starring the Fantastic Four. This, of course, the cover and the interior art are both by the great Herb Trimpe, with writing by Doug Moench. He did the entire run of Shogun Warriors, and also Godzilla, which was just a couple of years before this. At number 7 in my favorite comic books of the year 1980 is Shogun Warriors issue 20. So this was the last issue of the series. And like the issue before, this guest starred the Fantastic Four. And once again, we've got writing by Doug Moench, and both the fabulous cover and the inside art are by Herb Trimpe. Now, if I remember right, and I could be wrong, it wrapped up in, I think, an issue of the Fantastic Four where we seen the human pilots of the Shoguns appear. And I don't think it was right away, but it was a little bit later because Marvel lost the licensing. I think it was Hasbro, maybe. I'm not sure. But whoever had the license for Shogun Warriors, they took it away. Marvel lost that license. So they couldn't use the Shoguns, but the human pilots were completely owned by Marvel and created by Doug Moench. So they were able to use them later. They just could not say the word Shogun Warriors after that. They had to say something else. They probably said giant robots or something. I can't remember how that was done. I should look into that. At number 6, I have Avengers issue 198. Now, this one has Red Ronin in it. Now, Red Ronin, speaking of giant robots, Red Ronin was a giant piloted mech, very similar to the Shogun Warriors, but this was a creation that Doug Moench did within the Godzilla comic book. And after Godzilla was was ended. I don't know if it was technically canceled, but it ended at issue 24, I believe. They had some dangling plot lines there too, and they were wrapped up in this Avengers issue because you had the Red Ronin appear, the Red Ronin giant robot appear here, along with the little boy who piloted him, and I loved it. The cover, again, another fantastic cover by George Perez and Terry Austin. Wow, just a unbelievable team right there. The writer on this one was David Michelinie, and the interior art was by George Perez, but this time inked by Dan Green. And it is killer. And that's why it is number 6 in my countdown. Right in the middle, at number 5 in my favorite comic books of 1980 is ROM issue 1. ROM Space Knight issue 1. I remember seeing this on the stands, that Frank Miller cover. Just knocked my socks off, and it was like nothing I had ever seen. Me and my buddies, we collected this from the start, and we loved it. So glad that this finally made it to omnibus status, and now we can have this great stuff in oversized format. But we're talking about the single issue here, which I still own. Like I said, the cover is by Frank Miller with inks by Joe Rubinstein. And of course, like most, well, pretty much all issues of ROM are written by the great Bill Mantlo, and not all of the ROM issues were drawn by Sal Buscema, but this one is, and it is fantastic. At number 4, I've got the Micronauts issue 2. Now, this cover, I remember with the Pushmore, and the Micronauts are about to get chewed up in the blades. Just an awesome cover. This cover is, of course, by Michael Golden, and this is the Micronauts, some of their, if not the first, some of their first adventures on Earth. They're finally in our universe, where they're, of course, the size of toys, and they have to contend with the giant humans, and all manner of weird stuff happens. I just love this so much, because as a kid, of course I had action figures. I don't think I actually had any of the Micronauts, oddly enough, but I had other action figures. And so here we had toys come to life. So this was right up my alley, but it was so much more than toys. Bill Mantlo really worked an awesome science fiction story into this. At number 3 in the countdown, I've got another issue of Micronauts, but this one is issue 7. And this one, like that She-Hulk from earlier, it has Man-Thing on the cover. And man, I love the Man-Thing. And here they're in the swamps, the Florida swamps, and they encounter the Man-Thing. Oh man, it is so fantastic. This is one of my favorite single issues of all time. In fact, I love this one so much years later. My daughter Kristen, aka the Comic Slayer, she was able to get this one autographed. The cover is autographed by the artist Michael Golden. So this is a treasure for sure. Number 2 in my favorite comics of 1980 is Moon Knight issue number 1. Now this is Moon Knight's first series, and I collected it from the get-go too, and I loved it. This, of course, is by Bill Sienkiewicz, this cover, as well as the interior art. And this is another one also written by Doug Minch. He was one of my favorite writers for sure. He wrote so many great stories, and the Moon Knight series was one of the best things he ever did. I do believe that. Maybe the top thing he ever did. I mean, he did Shogun Warriors, he did Godzilla, Moon Knight, I mean, just on and on and on. He did Master of Kung Fu. That was Doug Minch. Yeah, he was just a hell of a writer. But my number 1 favorite comic book of the year 1980 is none other than Uncanny X-Men issue 139. Now, in this one, Kitty Pryde, my favorite X-Men character, probably my favorite X-Men character of all time, I would say. It's between her and Wolverine, so I don't, it's kind of a toss-up there, but this was where she officially joins the team, and it has that iconic image with the divided panels where she's in the center and it says, "Welcome to the X-Men, Kitty Pryde. Hope you survive the experience." And then that catchphrase was used later on in other issues with other characters joining. They would use that same sort of motif. So, but this was the first time they did that, I'm pretty sure. Correct me down in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but I think that they all come from this. I'm pretty sure. But of course, the cover and the interior art in this one is none other than the greatest X-Men team of all time, in my opinion, John Byrne and Terry Austin. For me, it doesn't get any better than that. That's why it is number 1 in my top 10 comic books of 1980. Hope you like taking a look at this, hearing an old man musing about the past. Long before many of you watching were probably bored, but 1980 was a great year for comic books, and these are my 10 favorites. So, hope you like taking a look at that. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't already for more, and I will catch you next time.